Okay, we're on. Thanks, Natasha.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, so with that, let's get started. So let's see here. So before we dive in to our session today, I want to kick off a round of introductions from our staff here at Safe Routes Partnership, and I'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Vanessa Casio. I'm the Program and Policy Manager at Safe Routes Partnership. I am actually tuning in from Arizona today, which is my home state. I'm a recent transplant to the East Coast. I just moved to DC, Washington, DC in July. But I'm really happy to be tuned in with y'all today. I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic on to my colleagues. Natasha, if you want to introduce yourself, and then Marisa.
Yeah, great. Hi, everyone. I'm Natasha Riveron, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Healthy Parks and Places Manager. I've been with the partnership for about 3 years, doing this work in various communities with community-based organizations. And I'm so excited to have more of a kind of state-focused cohort. And I am in Seattle, Washington. I don't know if I mentioned that. Marisa, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marisa Jones. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Policy and Partnerships Director at Safe Routes Partnership. I've been with the organization for 7 years and have been here since we launched our Safe Routes to Parks work 5. Actually, this is our 6th year, so really exciting. Been part of this from the beginning. And most of my work is on funding and how do we pay for all these improvements that we want. And I also just need to share that I am a Commonwealth of Pennsylvania native. I grew up in the beautiful Lehigh Valley, and I live now in the city of Philadelphia. But I am similarly so excited to be working on this state-based activating communities program, especially in a state that I know well and holds so dear to my heart. So thanks so much, all of you, for being here, and I'll pass it back over to Vanessa.
Cool. So we want to go ahead and we want to know who you all are and who's with us today. So if you don't mind using the chat box and tell us who you are, your organization or your group, and where you might be tuning in from Pennsylvania. And as you do that, I will briefly mention as well, I joined the partnership in April of this year. And prior to joining, I was actually working at a local health department in Arizona. But then before that, I was working with a nonprofit organization based in Tucson, and was as the Safe Routes to School coordinator. And we had the really great opportunity to participate in the Safe Routes to Parks Activating Communities program. So being part of a cohort of other organizations working to advance Safe Routes to Parks, in particular in our Tucson community. So it's really cool to continue to work alongside Natasha and Marisa on this from the other end of it. So I can give you some insights into what that's like, but that's sort of the experience and background that I am also bringing to the table. So thank you all for sharing in the chat. It looks like we have some diversity of different places and organizations. So that's exciting to have you all here. So as you're introducing yourselves in the chat box for us, just want to briefly say what we hope to accomplish today. We certainly want to give plenty of time for your questions about the Activating Communities program, but we thought it might be helpful to dive in before diving into questions. I have a few slides to briefly give an overview of the program goals, our approach, eligibility, and what you can expect to accomplish during the program period. And then what we'll do is after we go through that slide deck, we can save the Q&A portion at the end. But I will encourage you to still put in your questions during the short presentation, so that way we don't lose those questions. And Natasha is going to be moderating those for us, and we can always, and we'll save those for the end. So just encourage you when things come up to type them in the chat. Great. So what is Safe Routes to Parks? We'll start with the basics here. So what we at the partnership say is Safe Routes to Parks is a movement to make great parks safer and easier for people to access by walking, biking, and taking public transit, especially in low-income communities and communities of color, where less investment has gone into the routes to and the amenities in parks. We do this because safe routes, safe places to walk and bike and connect with nature directly contribute to a community's physical, social, and mental well-being. So Safe Routes to Parks, in collaboration with the National Recreation and Parks Association, developed what we call the Safe Routes to Parks Action Framework, which is a guide for advocates through the process of assessing park access, planning improvements, implementing changes, and sustaining that work. This is the framework that we use for participants in the Activating Communities program. And engagement is really at the center of this process. Community members are the local experts and the local experts on their neighborhoods, and are really essential to the process of project selection, design, and implementation. So the goal of this work is to help local organizations partner with community leadership to build on the community's assets, work toward rectifying past and ongoing injustices, and address community priorities. Over the long term, with increased safety and accessibility, Safe Routes to Parks seeks to increase park usage and improve health and well-being for people of all ages, races, abilities, and income levels. To do this, we provide tailored technical assistance along with a $10,000 award for 4 nonprofits organizations based in Pennsylvania. Communities that are selected will work closely with Safe Routes Partnership staff from January through September 2023 to proactively engage community members in the process of assessing park access, putting together an action plan to address barriers, and begin implementing the plan with an early action that sparks momentum. So we want this program really to set the foundation for communities to implement and sustain the work around park access by engaging and uplifting community voices. And we want to really support groups in strategizing what comes after this 9-month program by helping them to identify their long-term vision for Safe Routes to Parks, and really thinking about policies and identifying funding opportunities to make on the ground improvements a reality. So this is a photo from actually a past Activating Communities participant at Blue Zone's Hawaii project. So this is a photo of one of their projects that they were able to accomplish during the program period. So right off the bat, we want to make it clear who can participate and what we're looking for. And so we really want to stress that only nonprofit 501c3 organizations based in the state of Pennsylvania are eligible for this funding. Since we're only funding organizations in a single state this year, in the past we've done a nationwide call for applications. This year we're only offering this opportunity to organizations in Pennsylvania. We are really aiming to select 4 nonprofits that are representative of the geographic diversity of the state. So looking to ensure that we have representation from small and mid-sized communities. Beyond that, this program will be a good fit for you if your organization is, 1, committed to advancing racial and social equity, 2, centering community voices and priorities, or your organization's really wanting to do more of that. If your organization is currently or is interested in building partnerships with local agencies, which can include agencies in parks or planning or transportation. And also, most importantly, organizations that have the capacity and commitment to carry out the engagement and planning activities required for this program. So this will be our fifth cohort for activating communities, and the partnership has found that the most successful participants have a dedicated point person to work on this, and they can be backed by a team or a coalition. So what comes with the program for participants of activating communities? So one of the initial things that we are offering is ongoing technical assistance from Safe Routes Partnership staff. So we really do our best to tailor our technical assistance to community groups as needs are emerging. So that can be, technical assistance can come in many different forms, but some examples could be pulling together relevant data around park access for your community, information about local policies or funding opportunities, interfacing with your local decision makers or city staff to help build their knowledge and around safe routes to parks, so technical assistance can look different, and we really try to meet the needs of communities in that way. And the best way we can do that is through our monthly coaching calls. So the expectation is that we connect with participants of the program at least once a month. This could be more often, and we're happy to toggle back and forth between biweekly or monthly calls. What else comes with this program is Safe Routes Partnership staff will facilitate a 2-day action plan workshop. So in the past couple of years, we haven't been able to do any in-person site visits. We're hoping that changes this year, and we're planning to some degree to do these workshops in person in those communities that are chosen and selected. At the end of the grant period, grantees will have an action plan report with really clear next steps and guidance on how to sustain safe routes to parks in their communities. And this year, we really want to work with grantees to have a really clear plan on how they can sustain safe routes to parks. And this could be mobilizing resources and identifying funding opportunities. Sustainability can also be strategies to integrate these community visions into system-wide plans, policies, and other tactics to really build community ownership around safe routes to parks. Lastly, a $10,000 implementation grant is also part of the program. So we've been talking about this Safe Routes to Parks action plan, and you might be wondering what exactly it is and what it isn't. So we want to communicate that the action plan is something that's owned by a community or community-based organization, and it's based on that Safe Routes to Parks action framework. The framework includes those 4 main sections that I mentioned earlier: assessment, planning, implementation, and sustainability, with each of those areas really heavily influenced by engagement, community engagement. But it's really meant to be an organization and or community's plan to move forward their Safe Routes to Parks vision. And the plan identifies opportunities to connect those community needs to more formal government processes. So it's a public-facing document available to elected officials, city staff, and the public, but is not necessarily owned by the municipality, though the municipality should and can certainly be a partner in the Safe Routes to Parks planning process. In the past, communities who have participated in this program have formally adopted the action plans as part of their parks improvement plan and park master plan. and or it's led to funding opportunities for infrastructure. So having a public facing document really does help with implementation. And during the program period, during the 9-month period, grantees will be completing engagement activities, assessment activities, participating in the action plan workshop, and then completing an early action. And so all of those will be documented in that action plan and used to inform and shape the strategies and goals going forward. So in previous years, we've tried different approaches to compiling that action plan. And this year, we really want to lead the drafting and compilation of that plan as staff, as Safe Routes Partnership staff, so grantees can really focus their efforts on completing the components that inform the plan. So the engagement activities, assessment activities, and leaving plenty of time to strategize around sustainability. So what's required of grantees? So grantees can anticipate participating in monthly coaching calls with our staff, like I mentioned earlier, assisting with planning a 2-day action plan workshop. So thinking through who to invite, logistics, informing the agenda. So really helping to shape that action plan experience. Leading engagement and assessment activities prior to the action plan workshop. So I'm going to go over our anticipated timeline for the program, but hoping that organizations that participate are expected to complete some level of community engagement activities prior to that workshop. Implementing one early action from the plan. So those early actions have really varied across communities, but are really meant to catalyze the Safe Routes to Parks work for those community groups participating. Also, a clearly outline steps and recommendations for sustainability. That's a piece that we really want to work closely with grantees this year, and making sure that they are feeling confident in moving forward Safe Routes to Parks after the completion of this program. Also, submitting a final report, and that is a grant report that really helps to outline and give us insights onto what you were able to accomplish for the program, and helps to inform how we can continue to shape and improve the program going forward. So what makes for a good application? Focusing on a park or a neighborhood or community, and a community is a broad term, but community can be people or a place that has been underinvested in or disinvested from. What else makes a good application is telling your story. So telling us about why does your community want to work on these on Safe Routes to Parks? Why is this needed where you live? So really helping to weave that narrative for us. Demonstrating capacity. So how does this fit into maybe your existing priorities as an organization or your existing work as a community group? And also we want to note on here that this does not fund the development of new parks. So really just trying to emphasize what this opportunity is, and is really about the connections to parks and green spaces. So briefly, the timeline, and this information is also on the webpage, but we just want to emphasize what we're hoping to accomplish. So we have applications currently open. The deadline for our applications is December 2nd, and we hope to have our cohort of 4 organizations selected by mid-December, and really ready to start the work in January of 2023. The program runs from January 2023 till the end of September. January is when we'll start monthly coaching calls and getting a better sense of the goals and the technical assistance that we can be providing to those groups. in the initial months of the program will really be focused on completing community engagement and assessment activities, and supporting those community groups to implement those activities between the months of January and March, essentially prior to the action plan workshop, which we hope to be hosting with those community groups between like April or May, depending on the time that works best for us and the time that works best for those communities. Really focusing the summer months on implementing an early action. And then after that, really focusing on refining, drafting, finalizing the action plan. So really thinking about the content and priorities that we're want to make sure that you're feeling confident going forward, and also have a clear plan to sustain that work. So September 30th is when we hope that when we plan the early action and the final report to be due. So that's the timeline that we that will follow for the Safe Routes to Parks Activating Communities program. This is actually my last slide. So with that, we have plenty of time for any of your questions that may be coming up for you. I don't know, Natasha, if we have anything coming up in the chat yet, but if you're welcome to either unmute yourself or type any questions that you may have in the chat box. But I know we have several folks in the room with us, so don't be shy.
Yeah, so I had a direct question asked, and I did answer this in the chat to the person who asked, but just to like underscore this, basically, somebody asked if we are a Parks and Recreation Department in a local township, are we not eligible for this grant? And I shared, yes, that's correct. So if you are like a local municipality, government, township, you are welcome to partner with a local 501c3 who is eligible. I think those kinds of partnerships are great. But no, like the townships, only 501c3s are eligible for this particular grant opportunity.
And just to put a finer point on that, that's not specifically our organization's doing. We receive funding to run this program from a private philanthropy, and that is their stipulation. And so we've done this work in a number of incredible communities across the country, led by nonprofits in partnership. So as Natasha mentioned, like seeking out either like a YMCA or a PTA or a Friends of the Park organization. And if you are interested in applying but can't identify a 501c3, reach out to us. We can do a little research too.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Todd Roy, Conestoga River Club. I apologize to the host for being late. Was having technical issues. My organization is a water trail management club. We work with PEC and POWER, Pennsylvania Organization of Watersheds and Rivers. And we are the local managers of the Conestoga River Water Trail. Right now, we are in the middle of developing our management plan for the entire river, which will hopefully by May, June, provide us with implementation plans ready to go, permitting, everything on out. Is this eligible funding for implementation only, or is it also possible for planning efforts?
Yeah, so I think the funding that I think we have some guidance on our FAQs is specifically for implementing an early action. I don't know if Marisa and Natasha have other thoughts about that question, but if I think I'm understanding your question is like how can the funds be used?
Right. All right. Could you clarify, because I'm very new to the grant world. We're only 2 years old. When you say early action, could you tell me what that means specifically to you?
Yeah, sure. So I guess there's two parts of like what is an early action and what we hope it accomplishes, right? So early actions have really run the gamut of different depending on the community group. So we can give you specific examples of how community groups have used that funding, whether that's through doing further community engagement activities that really kind of solidify the plan, demonstration projects like that photo in Hawaii that was like really demonstrating what a safe intersection could feel and look like with low cost materials and paint. It's something that can be implemented during the grant period, so by September 30th. But really also thinking about like what on the ground it does, and also sort of what it does for the broader community of kind of like galvanizing community support around safe routes to parks. And Natasha, Marisa, I don't know if you have anything else to add based on specific examples, maybe.
That was actually quite helpful, that explanation, because we have a large number of community engagement activities that we're looking to do this year, building upon our 2022 success. That I think that this might fit, specifically when it comes to engaging diverse population sections, the overlooked, the unseen, the folks who aren't at the conservation table, if you will, and the green space, community when it comes to what's the word I'm looking for? Environmental justice.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I just want to say, Todd, I really appreciate your question. In all of the communities that we've worked with, we haven't worked with a water-based organization. So that's really intriguing to me. But one thing that I want to say to your first question, and just to clarify this for everybody, because I feel like it's an important distinction, is that we really view this is not just a grant program that you get $10,000. Like, we've really tried to frame this as like, hey, this is like a technical assistance award that comes with some implementation money. And so we are really looking for organizations that want to work in partnership. Like our colleagues, we have a whole department within our agency where people hire us to provide this type of assistance, and they pay us an hourly rate. And basically through this program, we're providing like that part is paid for. And so this is really like, we're here to provide technical assistance and coach and work with you through developing this engagement plan, engagement activities and action plan, and then giving you money to implement that. And so it feels really important to distinguish between like, this is more than just a typical like, oh, apply for money and get that, and then you don't talk to the funder again. Like, this is way more of a like hands-on activity.
Well, and that really does make sense to me, because one of the things that I have come to appreciate quite profoundly recently is how going outside of the traditional watershed organization boundaries is achieving greater levels of success. So when we're talking about water trail management, for us, the safe passage to parks, if you would be having secured, inclusive recreational facility points to the river and that recreational corridor, whether it be passive recreation, active recreation like fishing or boating, and providing that outreach then to educate the public on the cultural, historical, and recreational opportunities present. So anyway, thank you, ladies. You answered my questions quite well.
Great. Thank you so much for asking, because it helps to clarify points for everybody. Any other questions? Natasha, did you have anything?
There's nothing else in the chat box. I just wanted to we have like the next 30 minutes open to just like chat through your questions. So please feel free to just like unmute, come on camera or not. We're happy to just like workshop and chat.
I just had a question. I'm curious about your success with other programs, like actually seeing their projects through to fruition. Like in our community, I certainly would appreciate the assistance with planning, but like we need money to do the projects.
Mhm.
Nicole, can I ask where you're located?
Yeah, I'm in Lebanon County.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Marisa.
I was just gonna say, totally hear you on that, and we know that that's an opportunity for communities all across the country. And that's one of the things that our organization actually has a lot of expertise in, is like, how do you access funds? So one of the shifts that we've made after doing this work for the last 5 years is we really want to help communities better connect to public dollars to create the types of projects that they want. And so I can give you just one example, but there are several others from the years that we've done this. But Natasha worked with a community in Arkansas, in Little Rock, that they were trying to connect a neighborhood and their zoo, their park, their library. And, you know, they did a whole bunch of community engagement to understand like what would help. And they identified that turning a 4-lane bridge into a 2-lane bridge and making 2 of the lanes for people walking and biking is actually what would really make the difference. And through our project, they did a pop-up, and then they were able to show that that was so wildly successful. People really like were safer and liked this, and it didn't impede car traffic that much. And then they ended up getting $1 million to implement that through their state's transportation department. And that's something that like, we know how to help you identify what those longer term funding sources are. But I would say if you're just looking like we just want money to implement, like this is probably not the opportunity. But if you want to think through like, okay, what are the different things we need? And then are we interested in learning more and connecting to how do we pursue that funding on an ongoing basis? How do we strengthen our applications? Like that is the sort of thing that we can help with through this program.
Mhm.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I think we must have done a really good job with our info session because all the questions have been answered, but we wanted to really give people an opportunity to if there's anything that is coming up for folks or that's not clear from our webpage. We also mentioned on our Safe Routes to Parks Activating Communities that we're also concurrently running a program for 3 state agencies. So we're really excited to be actually working with the state of Pennsylvania to advance safe routes to parks from that level. So this is our first year really focusing activating communities in just one state, and really excited to kind of connect the dots with different agencies. So the program this year is a little bit different again, but we're really excited to be focusing our efforts in the state.
If folks are interested, we can share just a couple of the just other highlights, sort of getting to, is it Todd or Roy? This question, can just rattle a couple off, and Natasha, you can chime in here too. But I mean, some of them are in Birmingham, Alabama. We piloted a bike lane, like a slower bike lane between a library and a park, which then when the city was repaving, they ultimately striped the new bike lane. So that was really exciting. In that Hawaii project, they painted, they extended the turning radius for curbs to make it as people were to go more slowly around the intersection at this park, and then painted a mural in the 4 corners. And it was like this really cool intergenerational project with like seniors and middle school students. We had a project that was really, they knew that it was unsafe. They felt unsafe getting to the park. And part of their planning process was really to identify like, okay, what aspect of this feels unsafe? And they determined that it was like cars rolling through the stop signs. And so what they did was they got LED flashing stop signs at the park intersection. And that project was kind of cool because they did like before and after counts of like how many cars didn't stop, and now how many cars stop. What else? In Cleveland, somewhere in Ohio, I can't remember where.
Youngstown.
Youngstown, sorry. We've done projects in a lot of places in Ohio. In Youngstown, they there was like a tennis court that was, people were like doing quote unquote nefarious activity. And so they ended up like raising the tennis court and making it like putting in lights and making it like more of a community space. And this was after they like had a whole bunch of community listening sessions. And then they ended up like that engendered more support. They like put up this fence and built a sidewalk. And I think all of the projects have taken some sort of like community input, built something, and then there's been, that has led to an additional investment of public dollars. And I think that's really what we want to support communities to do.
Yeah, I would say, so like in the Youngstown example, like seeing that community support got the city council to invest some additional money to like redo the sidewalk there. Or in Birmingham, like something that was part of our technical assistance was aligning the city's repaving schedule with the plans that the Birmingham team had put together. They were like, hey, like we want to work on this section. Like we know that there's like not money specifically to do this, but we know you're repaving. So then like just aligning those kinds of things and using the things that already exist. So we have a question in the chat box about why the program only focuses on Pennsylvania and if there's any plans to go to other states.
So this is the 5th year of activating communities, right? And so
Sixth, yeah.
6th, okay. So this is our first year focusing on a single state. In the past, the Safe Routes Partnership has done a nationwide call for applications. And so the Activating Communities program in the past has been a cohort of a mix of different communities from across the country. This year, we are only focusing on Pennsylvania, in part because of our shift in focus of working at the state level to advance safe routes to parks. So I mentioned this concurrent program that we're calling the Accelerator Program, where we're working with state level teams, transportation and transportation, parks, and public health to really look for opportunities to improve safe routes to parks for those states. So Pennsylvania happens to be one of those states that we are working with in the state on the state level. So we're working with the state's Department of Transportation, Natural Resources, and Public Health. And so we really wanted to focus our efforts in activating at the local level as well to really amplify and maximize our resources to improve safe routes to parks. So yeah, this is our first year doing it, only a single state. And so we're excited to kind of shift, but we have done in the past a broader call for applications.
And then another question in here is, it's kind of a confirmation question, which is, so you could help us perhaps examine ways to make routes to parks and green spaces more handicap accessible, or effective ways to help with litter so that people feel safe on their way to and then within those parks and greenways. Is that correct?
So I'm rereading the question. So the question is about accessibility. And I think that, yeah, so I guess the broad answer is yes. So part of the engagement and assessment activities is really identifying what those needs are. So whether, for example, like an assessment activity can be organizing community groups to do a walkability assessment to identify how could routes be more accessible for people with disabilities, and identifying what those specific needs and priorities could be. And so, yeah, through the engagement and assessment activities, identifying that, and then after that, identifying, okay, how do we make this a reality? What are opportunities that exist? Some groups, yeah, have identified, okay, cleanups, community cleanups as a way to really help to build more ownership around parks and park spaces. And so, yeah, all of those, depending on the community needs, that, you know, those are issues that may come up, and working through how do we address those and some concrete actions to addressing them. Oh, thanks, Marisa. Marisa put in a more specific example too from a past activating communities organization.
Yeah, Marcia, I would say that's exactly the kind of thing that we can help with, and then figure out how to implement that, how to make those things happen.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to find more of our write-up on the Salem project, but I'm struggling to do it while we're on this call.
Yeah. And I don't know if folks have questions about like the logistics of the application, or like, I'm seeing questions coming in, but yeah, like the logistics of the application or anything, like we can answer that here as well.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question in the chat box, which is, can you elaborate on the coaching assistance grantees will receive? Will you help create documentation, identify partners, create evaluation tools?
Yes to all of those. And I think, I mean, if you're looking for like specific, maybe getting a little bit more specific or examples, I think in the past, like Safe Routes Partnership is really good about identifying and working through brainstorming, thinking about who should be engaged in your Safe Routes to Parks planning and engagement. How do you engage them? You know, creating documentation. So yeah, helping to create assessment tools or engagement activities, we can certainly help with. The action plan itself, which is a deliverable at the end of the grant period, is a document that we will compile with your support and feedback. Evaluation tools, that is also something that we are really big on, is like identifying like what are your measures of success, how do you measure them, what are some real concrete tools or ways to do that, and showcase that what the impact of the work is. So I don't know, Marisa and Natasha, if you have any other examples, but I would say yes to all of those.
Yeah, totally agree with Vanessa. Yes to all of those. And I'd also say like our technical assistance is very customized. Like on one project, I was providing like, okay, let me draft the agenda for this meeting and let me draft your talking points. For another grantee, another recipient, I was like helping research like, what type of paint do you use for an intersection mural? Like, okay, it's thermoplastic paint. Where can they find thermoplastic paint in Honolulu? Okay, for another project, it was helping them come up with a memorandum, what is the word? Like a policy document. Natasha mentioned the complete streets and repaving schedule. So frantically researching like, okay, when is Birmingham repaving this street? So we'll do all sorts of things. And Natasha can maybe speak to the evaluation piece, because she led a really cool project for our recipients in 2021.
Yeah, I think something that we have seen with really successful projects is that people, like, we will consider evaluation from the beginning. So like when we're thinking about, there's like very concrete things like, oh, like we put in a stop sign, like how many people stop before and then how many people stop after. But then there's also things like expanding on partnerships. Like we could talk about, you know, like who are the people you're connected to? Like what are, like, is there influence on like these different pieces of this work? And then like afterward assess like, okay, like how has that changed? And like write that up and talk about like the success that you guys have seen working on that. I think there's like so many ways to assess success. And I think like we really value not just like the hard numbers that you can like take, but they're helpful for like funding and convincing people to like replicate certain actions. But there's certain things like increased skill, increased knowledge of like how to engage with these types of programs, and like public funding. So I think that's like sort of a broad overview, but it's something that we are very kind of focused on, especially for this program.
Yeah, and I think just I mentioned earlier that I was part of an organization that was part of the Activating Communities program. And I think one of the really cool things that Safe Routes Partnership could offer in their technical assistance is a training for agency staff and consultants who are working on building these connections and really helping them to understand like community engagement needs for particular parts of our community and like why they should be connecting with across agencies to coordinate better. And so really bringing in that expertise, but also a different messenger into the room. So it wasn't just like the organization always advocating for these things, but it's like, okay, these are folks who are seeing these trends across the country. Here's the information we're bringing. Like, how do we make sense of this? And engaging like agency staff in that conversation. So that was a really customized example of like, oh, this was an opportunity, and Safe Routes Partnership was able to bring that technical assistance to our community.
And then we had a question about how many grants we plan to award, and the answer is 4. And we're going to be looking at the like sort of geographic and like just I think like geographic, but also like not just I don't want to say cultural, but just like context diversity, like rural, small, larger. We're going to be looking at the diversity of the state. And then the other question is, what is the first steps or next step in developing a partnership? If this was covered earlier, I apologize. Todd, could you clarify what you mean by that in developing a partnership? Like in terms of the community engagement piece, like we do talk through who might be the best partnerships to develop in your community, but if that's what you're getting at.
I'm going to back up and give you just a little bit of background. First off, I'm coming at this from the position of a retired chef. So working in the nonprofit world is entirely new to me. I guess the question I'm asking is that because we're new, there is an awful lot of what you said that are things that we need. Helping us figure out how to generate documents, trying to help us figure out what the best partnerships are, what the best engagement pieces are, and what community segments we should target. That is a huge piece of what we're trying to wrap our head around over the next year. And I'm very interested in, so what do we do to start that process, for application and pre-work?
Vanessa, do you want to take that?
I'm like percolating here. So I think, well, I know like one of the pieces of this is really, or one of the things we mentioned earlier is the most successful grantees, past grantees and participants are those who do have a coalition or a team that they're working with. And I think that in so many instances, it's like trying to look for what already may exist in your community, working if there's, you mentioned environmental justice groups and some other maybe groups that maybe already have similar value sets, but maybe not, they may not be working on safe routes to parks in particular, but trying to kind of think through what may already exist in those communities, what groups may be interested in working with these on these issues. We are also asking for some level of commitment from like a municipality. So if you don't already have those that relationship established with a more formal government agency, that will also help you to be more successful in the Safe Routes to Parks initiative. So those are kind of like two pieces I think might be helpful. I don't know, Marisa, Natasha, if you have anything else to add.
I will say that we do enjoy a very robust relationship with almost the entire county. If that doesn't sound too broad, I mean, we're talking 17 townships, 3 boroughs, 1 city, and the county government itself. as well as multiple stakeholders, the Lancaster Conservation District, the Lancaster Conservancy, the Clean Water Partners, and others. But that being said, in developing our own internal operational capacity, while we do have some great mentors and some great help, and they've, we've achieved some rather impressive metrics already, there's still just the housekeeping, if you will, in sort of setting up our internal to be worthy partners of that coalition, if that makes sense. And have a plan that coincides with everyone else that we can move forward.
Sure. I don't know, Marisa, Natasha, if you had anything other insights to add about that question, but no, that's helpful to know, Todd. And congratulations for having such a broad reach, because I do think that's important and helps to kind of advance those goals.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we have a few minutes left. I don't know if anybody else has any burning questions. Natasha, I know you mentioned sort of the application, the logistics of it. Again, it's open until December 2nd. There's a Google form that is linked on our webpage, but we encourage you to download the PDF version of those questions. So if you're planning to submit an application, you can prepare your responses that you can easily cut and paste into that form. We're also asking if you have a letter of support from your municipality to email that to us, along with any other documentation that you think would be helpful for your application. But yeah, if there's no other questions, we will be uploading the slide deck and the recording of this video to our webpage. It should be live on Monday. So if you wanted to pass this along to any of your colleagues or partners, please do so. Well, Natasha, Marisa, any last words? All right, great. Thank you, everybody, for your time. And yeah, please reach out if there's any other questions that come up for you. We have our email on the application page. Please don't hesitate to email us with any questions or issues that you may be grappling with.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.